Tech Reimagined. Redefining the relationship between people and technology. Brought to you by Endava. This is Tech Reimagined.
Hello everyone, this is Bradley Howard and you're listening to the latest episodes of the Endava podcast Tech Reimagined, a podcast where we pick the brains of the most influential experts in their industries to help answer some of the big questions around technology that we have. Today we're diving into a really interesting topic, discussing the interaction between humans and AI, or artificial intelligence. Having pioneered the transformation of mobile internet, emerging digital technologies and sensor-based data throughout her whole career, our guest today is Inma Martinez. Hello Inma, how are you?
I'm really well. I'm really excited, Bradley.
Would you like to give us a little background about your career?
So my career is quite diverse. I started in banking at Goldman Sachs in Zurich, which was a bank involved in the development of the internet with the CERN in the 90s. And then after many years, I switched to a client, which was Cable and Wireless. And lucky me, they gave me the internet. I was the global head of IP services because nobody wanted it, because the internet in those days, nobody could understand what that was. There were no websites, and I was lucky to have it. And that led me to be part of the pioneers that developed wireless access protocols, the famous WAPs, the XML code to render HTML websites onto phones. And I built with my team the first AI of the mobile internet in 2000. So from then, I have been involved in every single emerging technology that digitized industries like video and music and many more sensors and connected cars. And I currently do quite a lot of government advisory because finally governments are concerned that AI development should be put into frameworks and be put to be for the highest benefit of the people.
Let's start talking about artificial intelligence first. What's the biggest misconception around AI?
The biggest misconception is that people think that AI is an entity that has desires and thoughts by itself, and that on a fine morning is going to decide to destroy us or to completely go off the rails and be, the demise of humanity. That's one of the worst things that I have to fight on a daily basis, because that is how it originally was written about. And finally, now we see that it's quite contrarily is a force for good.
So a lot of people worry when they hear about AI from the big Hollywood films where humans end up being eradicated by AI robots or whatever that is. On a more positive note, what are the big benefits that AI can bring to us humans?
The first big benefit is prediction. I'm going to the top of the pops, prediction. Of course, in the early stages of AI development, AI came to be developed because we needed to deal with complexity, tons and tons of data, with computations that we couldn't do with existing statistics or object-oriented databases. We had to go deeper with mathematics to deal with complexity. We deal with not knowing what is out there, or, for example, trying to achieve perfection, but mostly based on computation. Now, prediction is really a superior level, because not only you deal with something, you identify what it is, you explain, this is really what is going on here, but you can predict the outcome. And that is something that, for example, in the world of healthcare, is beginning to astonish, for example, image-based diagnosis. The majority of radiology, MRIs, CT scans, it's just an image. And then your radiologist has to look into that plaque and then say, oh yeah, I think that the tumor here is 1 millimeter, like that. That is nonsensical. In the very near future, the actual detection of tumors, of maladies, anything will be done by the machine. But the best thing is it will be able to predict how it's going to then evolve. And for example, in fields like rheumatoid arthritis, imagine if we would know that how something is going to look like in 3 or 6 months, it's is really we're moving towards a world that because of AI prediction, we'll be able to create better therapies. We'll be able to then know how to create better strategies. It's not just weather prediction. I remember when IBM bought the Weather Channel. If you ever go to the US, there was a TV channel that was all day long, the Weather Channel. And then one fine day, IBM buys it. And I remember nobody could understand what is IBM doing? IBM was buying the Weather Channel because it needed all those super trained predictive algorithms to teach Watson new tricks. Every time they bought a company, it was for Watson to learn new tricks, now weather, now this, now that. And it's prediction what is really going to be relevant. But many more things. I mean, the way I see AI functioning in the world is infiltrated so many segments in some funny and serendipitous ways. For example, I don't know if you play golf, but for people in the audience listening to us, if you play with Callaway clubs, the Epic Flash, which is a 2018 drive, the iron inside has been designed by an AI system. And rather than having the traditional kind of cross shape that the humans in the design department were developing year after year, they decided to give an algorithm 15,000 data points of physics, because when you hit a ball and it has to travel through space, it's had a coefficient of restitution, how far it's going to go. And that was what AI likes. So the iron came looking like a ripple, like when you throw a stone on a lake and there's ripples. And they almost didn't build it because they thought, what is this nonsense? It doesn't look at all like what we did before. And when they built it and they started playing with it, it was crazy, like 30 yards or 50 yards tops, like above all the other ones. So AI is finally showing how useful, but how fundamental to our progress it can be when it is used for good.
And you mentioned in your introduction that you are advising governments on AI as well. How do you think that governments will be able to use AI for good?
So the fundamental pillars of where we are working are obviously responsible AI. AI, when it's developed and put in the world, it needs to create good, fundamentally. The responsible AI. Also, big data. It's not just big. By the way, data was always big for us, but some consultants decided to create a new funky name. And now data is almost like a product because data now is tagged, is labeled, is stored in new ways, is categorized. So the data now is becoming like an element, like a tool, like almost like, what you use to build up something, with a more kind of a homogeneous feel to it. And obviously, the future of work is one of the big areas where we work. How humans are going to really develop their thinking and their potential when they pass many, many computational tasks to the machines. What is it that we are going to be doing at work? And really what is going to happen is that we will be more creative. There is a massive renaissance coming to us because human thinking, which is biological and is very abstract, machines cannot even achieve it. So the new employee teams, the new HR will be about how can we make people more creative, because we need that kind of wild neoteny around, because the computational thing is done by machines. We don't need to worry about them. And then lastly is AI needs to come not just to the big multinationals, but also to SMEs. Small companies will benefit so much if some of their strategies or systems were empowered by AI. They would save cost, etc., etc. So those are the four things that I currently work in the GPA, which is a global country member agency that came out of the G7 and the OECD, but also for the British government, for the European Union, it is, these are the areas. It really is.
You talked about SMEs, medium-sized businesses. Isn't that what a lot of the public cloud providers have already democratized? That they've made some of these really complex machine learning platforms and AI platforms available for almost anybody to use. I mean, it pretty much is anyone to be able to use those.
Yeah, because those are generic systems, and thank God, like kind of like plug and play, which is great. This is what everybody wants. Now, you need to create competitive attributes in order to compete, right? And what most people don't realize is that attributes are advantages intrinsic to you and only you because of, oh, you happen to be in a country where English is the language, or in a country of 300 million people, like things that it just happened. We're here and we're going to benefit from this. And then what people need to know is that AI is like a building block system. If you have some generic platform, you can build customized solutions intrinsic to yourself to make your products even more special or even better or more competitive, to leverage from all the other attributes that you are. And that is where the next 5 years are going to be in terms of defining the marketplace. Very clever product approaches, very clever business models. And you see, this is what the humans create, not an AI system. Going for a platform as a service, or for example, Volkswagen leasing all of the electric cars, like transportation as a service, that was created by someone in the finance department that I know. It wasn't an AI system. So it's really a decade where clever, imaginative management, strategy teams, product people are going to come up with real clever stuff to transform the competition in the marketplace. And obviously using AI as a tool, as a competitive tool.
On a previous episode, we had Tom Gruber join us, and Tom led the team that implemented Siri for the company that originally built Siri. And one of the things he talked about was that AI gives us a new kind of superpower to see ourselves and can predict disruptions in cognitive and mental health, because we were talking about the ethics of AI. What's your view on the ethics of AI and how it can be used for good and bad?
I always have this magical formula, which is whatever you put out there in the world has to be for the highest benefit of everyone concerned.
Okay.
It's not just about I'm selling products, but today companies have a responsibility to contribute to the welfare of society. So you cannot just launch things and then, fingers crossed, 10 years later, they find you out. Do you know who I'm talking about, right? Exactly. That mentality no longer cuts it. You cannot do that anymore. So first of all, your customers will be horrified. You would lose them. And then you would have lots of lawsuits. So it doesn't pay off. That's why if you are going to use technology and AI to create products and services to really help your clients, it's not about selling stuff. It's like, how can I help my client achieve their goals with what I sell to them? If it's software, if it's hardware, whatever it is, that's the mentality. So it's a purpose more than a sales strategy. And then because you hopefully want to be in the market for many, many years doing the great work that you do, there is a social responsibility about your actions. So we are entering into an era where ethics and responsibility and accountability and the purpose of companies are going to be part of the, the stakes that they're going to be measured against.
We haven't built the framework of ethics yet for these AI applications, and that's the biggest challenge at the moment, isn't it?
Well, that's what I'm working on. And for example, when the EU published the first draft of the directive, there was a lot of debate as to how do you define ethics? How do you define what's good and what's bad? And I've always advocated for, it's all about the outcome. I can create a wonderful browser where people will find all the websites in the world. fantastic invention. But if all of a sudden I start putting ads that drive people to bet their entire salaries and in bingos, that's not that great. So for me, it's very easy to see.
Thank you, Inma, for joining us on today's Tech Reimagined and the chance to pick your brain about some of the benefits and challenges around AI and machine learning and how we can make people's lives better, really. Really enjoyed that conversation. To all of our listeners, I really hope that you enjoyed this episode of Tech Reimagined, and thank you for joining us today. If you liked today's topic, show us some love by hitting that subscribe button, and don't forget to tune in next week for the latest episode of the podcast. If you have any further questions or want to reach out to any of us, then you can drop us a line at endava.com or message us on all of the major social media platforms. I'm Bradley Howard. This has been Tech Reimagined. Until next time.
Tech Reimagined. Redefining the relationship between people and technology. Brought to you by Endava. This is Tech Reimagined.